Good evening. I want to turn this light on. Today we're continuing our series on living financially free. And just to finish off from last week, there's actually one more thing I want to cover that I looked over that I wanted to cover from that last chapter. And we talked about last week. Anyone remember what we talked about last week? No one remembers? It's basically taking everything and finding what our needs are and what our wants are. Just what our wants. Food and clothing. Basically, and shelter. Those are our needs. We need to get rid of our addictions. If we can't live without the basic things that God says, that if you have these, be content. If you can't be content without those, that means there's addictions in your life. You need to get rid of those addictions. They're going to hurt you financially. However, one of the things I want to bring out that I didn't get to last week, and this is the area of using financial wisdom. For example, you might not be in debt, but you may be renting your house or leasing a car. That's not using financial wisdom. It would be better to go into debt than to lease or rent. What's the reason? Because when you lease or rent, you're paying for nothing. Even at the end of the lease, you don't get anything for return. So basically all you're buying is time. That's not financial wisdom. You can actually spend less to put a mortgage on a house, buy a house, put a mortgage on it, and be making those same payments, and at the end of the day, you'd have a house that's paid off. However, financial wisdom says, okay, you need a house, right? That's part of your raiment, I would say. But that's all you need. When we purchased our house, we bought a really inexpensive house, made it work. We took something that didn't look very good, and we made use of it, and ended up being something that worked very well for us. You gotta kind of improvise in some things, but it'll work. So we need to have financial wisdom. Sometimes you might be able to get rid of some expenses, but in the end, those expenses might have been worth keeping if they're helping you somehow in removing your debt or removing some of the areas of stress on your debt. A good example is of a car. That'd be true. Some people can buy the really cheap car, but it might not be financially wise to do that. Just a clunker that just gets you by, but you might be paying a lot in repairs, especially if you don't know how to do your repairs yourself. And so it might be worth putting a little more money into a car and using financial wisdom if you don't know how to look at a car, finding somebody that does. If you had bad experiences, for example, in the past, you've bought cars and they continuously broke down, all the cars that you got, you might need somebody else to look at the car before you purchase a car because you're not knowing what to look for. So you want to use financial wisdom because certain things can cost you more in the long run. For example, you can get rid of a car altogether. However, that might cause stress on being able to work at a job and make money, and that would not be financial wisdom. However, for a long period of time, when we were getting out of the debt from our house, we only had one vehicle, and we shared the one vehicle. We didn't need two vehicles. Making do with what you have will go a long way. So that would be covering the end of what I was wanting to cover last week. Today, what I want to go on to is the dangers of public assistance. You got that time thing? That disappeared. I don't know why it's disappearing, but so the dangers of public assistance. There's a lot of danger with public assistance. And not just for, the morality of it, but there's dangers of what being given financial assistance can actually keep you in debt, especially if you're not aware of the dangers. This is just one of the small dangers. But it sets you up to be under slavery. The reason is that you're still owed, and those gifts that you're giving, that are given to you, are not free. See, this is one huge danger of government assistance. It becomes a financial bondage to you in the end. How does this happen? Well, number one, it works to keep you under that slavery. A lot of people, when they are under these food stamps and all these other programs, they stay under there for a while. There's a point in time where we would be tempted, or at least I was tempted, hey, don't make much more money, because if you do make more money, you lose the food, lose all these assistance, and actually you end up making less. You can get to that point. When you make a certain point, you can lose huge. And so it brings you into financial bondage that sometimes that people that are struggling, if they're struggling with it already, and if they have that public assistance, if they get a raise or get a little bit higher paying job, they lose that. And once they lose that, there's that point in time you can lose by just making a little extra money and losing some of this assistance. You can lose like $10,000 to $20,000 in a year. That's a lot of money to lose. So there's this area of, hey, well, we don't want to go any further up, because if I go any further up, I lose this assistance, and that's a lot to lose. Because there's a lot of public assistance that makes up tens of thousands of dollars per year. And that is tax-free given to you. A lot of that. So that's the danger. One of the dangers, it drives you to not want to need to prosper anymore, because, hey, we're going to relax and take care of that. So it leaves you into that financial debt that you are in. But I want to tell you one other thing that's really bad about it is it's also bad for the culture, because anyone know about the government, they are crooked. There's a lot of spirits that are being dealt with in the U.S. government. When even with a just person going into government, if they're not prepared for the spiritual warfares that are coming upon it, going to be coming upon them, they will be brought into the area of submission unto those demonic forces. Demonic forces want the government. That is their focus. They go after cities. They want territories. They take the government. They can lead the people. They lead the people. They can destroy them. One of the big things it talks about in the Word of God says the root of all evil is what? The love of money. When you go into government, you have a lot of opportunities and ways that you can deceive people to get money. One of those ways is through a lot of your laws that come out. But how do you make the public be able to swallow these laws? How do you get all these things for the people to swallow? Is by adding something to it. It kind of talks about a little sugar. There's a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. There's what the government does is they have these programs. One of the parties that are known, the party that's known for wanting to help out in all these government fundings and everything like that, they're looked up to because of the funding that they're giving. How many like to receive a nice big stimulus check in the mail? Isn't it nice to have the government sending you money for no reason whatsoever? It feels nice, and it's like, hey, I look up to this guy. He's helping me out, right? The problem is there's a cost to it. And if you're a Christian, you should look at these costs very closely. It's not only a cost that leads us into financial bondage ourselves and puts the nation in a worse state, but it also is tied with a loss of freedom. If you look at some of these stimulus bills, they can't pass them on the merit alone. This is one of the big problems with the United States government is that each state, they want to put all this pork in it. And really, for example, when we had this stimulus package that was about COVID, we have I would think probably about 1% of it is they use the name, it's a COVID package, stimulus package, but only maybe 1% of it is really for COVID. But it's so much so much money, and you're able to do something like send out a check that people think they're spending. That's what the stimulus bill's about. Is that stimulus bill was about getting that $1,200 check. It wasn't. If you look at all the pork that was in it, it was sending money to feed themselves. We had one of the parts that were given out like to a music group or it was like a hall for music, but then the hall took all the money and they fired all the people, laid off everybody, and the people that actually worked there didn't get anything of it. It's a way to feed their pockets. And here's the problem. We won't stand against it if we're needing it and requiring it to get from them. We can't look at things from the standpoint of what they are if we are requiring that to live, to go on the way we're going on. When when we are in the area of receiving public assistance, there is that temptation to just vote and not stand against anything else that goes with it. Because if I stand up against it, I might lose this. The church has been guilty of this for many years. They've been tied on the Johnson Amendment to it, where it took away their freedom of speech. Basically, the government says, you just keep quiet about politics, and we'll give you tax exemption from your giving. And property tax. Churches do not pay property tax. What's the clue on that? Is like, well, you got to be able to qualify under there, keep your mouth shut about politics. Well, why does Satan want politics so bad? Because he takes territories. He wants to rule territories. And so all these programs are to get Satan's foothold into government, but to be accepted by the people because they see that they might get something from it. The other danger. Has anyone seen with all the financial aid, this is something I've struggled with a lot of times because I know how much financial aid is out there for people who are poor. It's pretty hard to be homeless, isn't it? I mean, if you go for all these programs, the government will feed you. The government will make sure that they will take care of you in a lot of different areas. You don't need to make much. They'll give you heating assistance. They'll pretty much pay for your whole entire heating. So when somebody's poor, when a charitable organization comes, wants to help out people, number one, it's like, why do they need help? The government takes care of them. See, the church is the one that God holds responsible for charitable giving, to taking care of the poor, the widows, the orphans. See, the government was able to take that responsibility away because the church refused to step up. But when the church refused to step up and the government takes it, when the government takes it, it becomes entitlement. Everybody gets it, right? You're going to be taken care of. This is socialism 101. Whether you work or not, the basic needs are going to be taken care of. Whether you actually earned it or not, you're entitled to it. Now, you can, the person that doesn't have can demand from the government. We see this all the time. Forgive student loans, and they're hostile against it. They're hostile they're like demanding because they've been used to a entitlement mentality. This is not the way the United States has grown up. If you remember going back in time, if you've heard maybe of some of the stories of maybe your grandma or great-grandmas and grandpas, Remember going back to the time when the telephone was just fairly new. You had people who were able to get a telephone, and they would open up their garage. They would put their telephone in the garage in case their neighbor that didn't have it wanted to use the telephone. They didn't have to. It was their telephone. Under a government mentality, you have to let me use your telephone. It's a demanding on them. However, back then, something else was brought out. When you are letting somebody use something cost-free that you don't have to, it builds something up. What is that? It brings love into a society. When you put a entitlement mentality into the nation, you remove the love. And instead, you have a demand and a complaining society. Remember how Moses had to deal with people. They demanded all these things. We don't want to be a nation like what was under Moses, struggling in the desert areas for 40 years. We need to be able to not let financial assistance become a bondage for us, meaning that we should not have to require it. If we require it, it becomes a bondage. Because if we require it, they can do whatever they want. And we just got to submit. Some of the greatest advances of darkness is because of a area of trauma or where we're or pain points or where we're under slavery. Because then we're willing to do whatever it takes just to survive. We'll keep these same people in that take away freedoms, that destroy our nation. Because, hey, I don't want all these other things taken away. They seem to care about us. See, the other thing is a deception. They seem to care about us. The Democratic Party is known because they seem to be the most loving party. Isn't it? They seem to stand for all these, if there's checks being handed out, it's usually the Democratic Party that wants to hand them out. The ones that supposedly stand for racial equality and justice, that they seem to stand for it. And that's why people go after it. Because we're against those type of things. We're against inequality, injustice. We're against racism. And it seems because that's what the banner that is held. But do you know the banner that is held doesn't mean necessarily tell you what's in back of it. You can put any cover you want on a book, but until you read what's inside that book, you won't really know what that book's all about. But people are judging by the cover. The things that are easily seen. The public assistance. I mean, Jesus was for giving to the poor, right? But he wasn't for taking it and stealing it from anyone to do it. It's always should have been from a giving heart. Never did God ever require somebody to steal something from somebody else and just give it to somebody else. But the government is able to do that. The things that the government can do, that if we looked in the light of a normal citizen, we'd call it theft. Well, this guy has a riding lawnmower and a regular push lawnmower. I should be able to take that riding lawnmower from him and give it to this other person that doesn't have a lawnmower at all. The government does that type of thing. And we think it's all right. It's got to be at our will. If the person wants to give it up, that lawnmower, and says, hey, you need a lawnmower, I'd love to help you. It's love that is passed on to do it, not demand that causes it. The other thing, the other danger in public assistance, and this is going into your directly relating with the poverty mentality and getting to financial freedom. This is one area you got to guard yourself, because like I say, I'm not, if you qualify for financial assistance, there's nothing wrong with taking it. But be careful and do not be deceived. Because if it changes some things about you, your character, it can cause more financial problems. One of those things that it does is it takes out your fight. How many know that when you're hungry, it's a motivator? Right? You'll do stuff to get food when you're hungry. When a person's homeless, there's a motivator. When everything is given to you, it takes away, it helps to destroy that fight to get out. It's like, well, I'm doing fine. The government's supplying my needs. I can relax. You will not succeed financially and get into the financial freedom that you need, that you desire, when you just relax. It is a fight. Don't let public assistance take the fight out of you. Another thing that it makes, and this is dangerous, and this is something that's actually praised in the United States. I've dealt with it. It's the victim mentality. I'm just the object of bad circumstances. I was born in a poverty family. Wasn't just handed everything down. It's all victim. My circumstances are what caused this. I'm just a victim of it. I wasn't born a child of Bill Gates. I didn't have the college of a Yale student. You know, one of the things that was really greatest if we look at black history. You know what? One of the things that really made them so successful, and it shows in the Bible, all the persecution that was going on to them, all the racism put against them, made them fight even stronger. Remember when Israel was being persecuted, they thrived. It wasn't right for the persecution. It wasn't right for slavery. It wasn't right for all these things that have gone on them. But what I'm trying to bring out here is the situation that you are put in should not put you into a victim mentality. The people that were had victim mentalities in the black community did not prosper. The ones that instead says, I'm going to show this generation, and those are the ones that rose to the top and made a difference. We know the people that were made huge difference. They made differences in the community and difference in history. They are remembered in the history books because they rose above the things that were put on them by society. Refuse to take the stance that this is where I am and this is just the way I've been and I'm just going to have to be here. You can rise, but if you have a victim mentality, you're going to always be defeated. Why? Because you've defeated yourself before you even tried. The biggest defeat is not what the circumstances. Some of the worst circumstances and some of the, like for example, some of the people that are in the Book of World Records, Guinness Book of World Records, had disabilities that said you shouldn't have been able to accomplish this. There was the one that has for memorization. I remember this story. He had, I believe it was ADD or ADHD. He rose. He knew he had something to fight, but he refused to become a victim to it. Instead, he said, I'm going to rise above it. There are so many people. There's so many stories. There's actually even a story about this guy that was in a wheelchair, on air from a air tube and that he's just supposed to be sitting in a tube all his life and do nothing. And he was attacked for trying to go out and do something else, to fight for it and make a difference. But yet, he rose above it because he had a fight in him, because he refused to become a victim. You take a victim mentality, you take defeat. We need to take the victor. We have everything that's going against us, maybe, but we will rise above it. Another thing, a danger of your financial assistance is that it removes accountability and responsibility. Puts the responsibility on the government. It makes other people pay for things they didn't do. This, in turn, encourages bad decisions. If, however, we are responsible. We'll be more careful on our decisions that we make because we're responsible for it. So it just brings up better decisions within our country. It'll help you out, even financially. Many people struggle to get out of debt. We were given the worst of situations, and we got out of the debt without financial assistance in only 3 years. Why? It's because of the choices that we make, because we chose to be responsible for it. We didn't want to live there forever in that situation. So, although financial assistance by the government is not good, as a believer, one of the things that God always encouraged is giving to the poor. However, it's not their primary need. Their primary need is as the gospel was preached unto them. People that are sick said, what is their need? That Jesus, when he said that, okay, the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear, and the poor have the gospel preached unto them. Their problem, their need was not the money. See, inside the gospel becomes contentment. The gospel itself has the way out of debt, out of their poor mentality. It is alone the solution. It can take care of the poor. Why is that? Can I say that? What does God say about food and clothing for the believer? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and these things will be added unto them. God personally will take care of your needs. When you put him first and his kingdom first. Learn from him. He can take care of you. But with that saying, the church is also responsible for helping people out, to pour out. I believe it takes wisdom, because sometimes when you give to the poor, you can actually be being harmful to them. One example, at Gate Beautiful, asking alms. Why is he asking alms? Well, he had no way to make a living. He was in a poor situation. He's not rich. But the apostles didn't give him money. They gave him something else. Something better. They took away the issues with him, that he could actually work now. He didn't need a bag anymore. No longer a blind beggar. See, we have the ability The question is, will we fight for it? Especially with the government trying to help out so much. And really, it makes things more expensive. If you ever noticed, with all these things that the free giveaways that the government takes so that they can fill their own pockets. If you ever went out to the stores with these with all these billions, actually $1 trillion law packages that they've been putting out. If you notice that once they put in all these stimulus of $1 trillion package, $1 trillion package, $1 trillion package, we've never heard, this was never done really in the history that I know of where you had $1 trillion packages all within the same administration. Usually you don't even get up to $1 trillion. But we had multiple ones in this last year or two. And after having those $1 trillion packages, if you went out to the store, you can see the difference it makes. How is that being helpful to the poor when you have a 50% increase in most of your food items, if not even 100% increase? How is it helping poor by having over double your price on fuel? Because of the ignorance of how things are put together and pulling down a pipeline. The same people that were all fighting for the poor have made it harder for poor by increasing the prices of pretty much anything that the poor are requiring. All that's happening is it's becoming a more dependent upon the government. And that's how the government likes it. That's how Satan likes it. We must rise up. We must rise up and say enough is enough. I'm going to fight, whether there's financial assistance or not. I will make more use. I will choose to make wiser decisions on how I spend my money. Because you can succeed. I tell you, if there was anyone that couldn't succeed, it would have been us. You can succeed. You can get out of the ruts that you've got yourself into. I don't care how far you've got in. You can get out. There's hope. Refuse to become a victim. Take this as a war. Take the financial assistance that you can, but don't be holding on to it, that it blinds you to the senses of what's really going on with it. When there's opportunities to change it, speak against it. To stand up against it in your votes. Because it's not helping the poor. It's helping the lawmakers get rich. A lot of people that go into office to government, they're not very rich when they go into it, but they've made themselves extremely wealthy inside it. So I want to close with this. That whatever situation that you're struggling with, whatever situation you've been placed in, or whatever situation that you got yourself into. You have a God that knows your needs. You must look at some of your choices. Need to repent for some of the things that you've done, because that breaks the repentance of why you stood for things. When you repent, it breaks that bondage off of you. Because a lot of us do not have a money problem. We have a heart problem. But we have a God that changes hearts. If you're in the situation where you've made decisions on addictions, made decisions because, well, I need this. And you stood for unrighteousness, even though you thought you were standing for righteousness, because you were blinded by the assistance and the disguise. Call out to God. Call out to Him, because He'll heal your heart. He'll take you from where you are. And he'll make miracles happen for you. Because He has done it for us. And He'll do it for you. It'll be a war. But my God is victorious. And He will take you into victory. I hope this message has blessed you. And remember, whatever situation, wherever you've been faced in, there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Following through and looking toward God, He will help you on your character, and He'll make you a better person, and He will make you a financial resource for others, because He's going to get you through it. Just look to Him. God bless y'all. We'll have service on Sunday, same time at 12 noon, and then Bible study next Wednesday. God bless y'all.